Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Supply Chain Disruption Lessons Learned from Certain Uncertainty. As this program has evolved, we are retooling the exact name. It's from now on going to be Supply Chain Disruption and Content Marketing. But why? Well, let's think back. For myself, since I graduated high school, it has been nothing but disruption after disruption after disruption. And this is going back 16, 17 years. So, as we look for ways to establish certainty in the future, there are some natural implications of what that means for content marketing. But rather than us getting too deep into the weeds with that right now, we're going to proceed with our next chapter, which was Toward Uncertainty Ability Leading Self and Others to Possibility Beyond the Unknown by Nathan Furr and Susanna Harmon Furr. Um, these two authors really, shed a lot of light on what they termed the uncertainty or first aid cross for uncertainty, and they cited some really great statistics in this. So, without getting too much into the weeds, which I think I have said it for the third time. So, if you're playing bingo, um, yeah, so let's get started here. Kevin, would you like to get started by talking a bit about your initial takeaways from this chapter?
Yeah, so just for those who haven't read it, it goes into what they call the upside of uncertainty, which provides over 40 tools to help individuals navigate uncertainty. And they group those tools into four different categories. The first being reframing. In reframing, you get to change the way you perceive and interpret challenges instead of um, always panicking. Maybe you don't. You can reframe it into opportunities. Second is priming, uh, being prepared and taking action so that when those opportunities do arise, you're ready for them. Uh, Doing, it emphasizes engaging with uncertainty. So, really going after it. Instead of running from it, taking decisive actions based on values rather than metrics or goals. And then four, sustaining, which deals with continuing the journey despite setbacks. Persevere, right? Taking a more internal, introspective look with emotional hygiene, reality checks, tapping into the moments, what they call magic or serendipity. So if you can do those four things, if you can do the tools that are in each of those categories, you will be so much more prepared to handle uncertainty instead of fleeing from it or panicking. You can remain calm, you can be focused, and you can persevere and succeed.
Definitely, and the book that Kevin referenced, "The Upside of Uncertainty," it's a book that Nathan Furr and Susanna Furr wrote in 2008, I believe, and that actually lists out all of those tools.
Mm-hmm.
But they really dig into some of the most important ones within those four categories. When they start talking about reframing, one of the things that really stood out to me was how they compared it to the biology term adjacent possible. It's kind of a shadow future hovering at the edge of things. And I just want to, show something that I've seen among clients in content marketing over the last 6 to 7 months, as well as over the last really, 8 years. When we think about it, marketing budgets are one of the first things to go, right? It's just the reality of it. But what if you get it right? And that's one of the core things they kept asking, like, what if you get it right and you can what if you're right there on the edge of that latest close or that latest set of leads, but you stop just shy of it? You'll never know. And one of the things that they talk about is the real importance that that plays in how well we approach things. It's tempting to force and control outcomes that have worked before, or even prematurely take a decision when a better outcome might be just around the corner waiting to be recognized. Companies that take those steps, that sort of wall off to protect against uncertainty, stagnate themselves and become unable to move forward past that point. I mean, and it has have a biological basis. We fear the unknown. The unknown, from a biology standpoint, leads to death. So we don't want to deal with that. And that's really what I found really, today is a tongue twister day. That is what I found really important when we think of all of the things that we could get right. It's not just content marketing. It's how are you positioning your supply chain as a solution to disruption? Yeah, you might be a disruptor depending on your technology, but how are you positioning it as a solution to those other disruptions, COVID, and all of that it brought to the industry? Are you preparing for a future of growth? Are you leading? Last week we talked about leading from a position of the future. It's the same storyline appearing in a different context.
I feel
And
like this is the same theme that we keep on reading about. I feel like I can't remember the exact example, but a couple chapters ago, it was talking about that one guy who just doubled down. When everyone else was closing up shop, he doubled down and hired people, and then was able to sustain, and then was prepared for crazy growth once things normalized. So he bet big and it won, and everyone else ended up closing up shop.
yeah,
So,
I mean, and that's really what we have to look at from a supply chain point of view is what relevance does each company bring to solving specific pain points?
yeah.
And that goes hand in hand with what relevance does today's supply chains bring to solving the issues of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Because you know what? The simple reality is we don't know what's going to happen. We can make an educated guess based on our KPIs, but it's still that great future could still be just on the edge of the horizon and we don't see it. So they talk a bit in here about how to offset the morass of uncertainty you are facing to help you avoid maladaptive behavior. Maladaptive, I'm a writer, not a speaker. To help you avoid maladaptive balancers, workaholism, addiction, negative individuals that ultimately sabotage your ability to find the possibility you are seeking. Our interviews revealed over and over that individuals who thrive under uncertainty use mundane uncertainty balancers, such as carrying their own favorite breakfast with them, or staying in the exact same hotel room, or automating their wardrobes. I really found that important because when you think about an uncertainty balancer, you have to think about what you are going to do right now to create some certainty despite uncertainty in the future.
Yeah.
And, Kevin, I think you and I were talking a bit about how that not only connects us to the supply chain and managing your suppliers, but also search engine optimization. So could you tell us a bit about that connection?
Hang on. Well, let me take the SEO side, and then you can speak to more of the supply chain side, okay?
Definitely.
With the SEO side, a lot of times it takes those mundane, repeatable tasks that no one has time or resources or just mental bandwidth to do. It's not the exciting stuff, it's the really mundane things, but it's that work that if you're able to do that consistently, repeatedly over time, you're setting yourself up as a company with your marketing efforts and sales and everything in the future. You're setting yourself up for success. The problem is, like I said, most people, most organizations don't have the time or resources or mental bandwidth. And that's why they partner with people like us who do that. We can help and partner with organizations to take on those mundane tasks so that you as an organization can have that success in the future. But it's those mundane, repeatable things that take time. It takes a really long time to see big results.
Yes.
So,
I like how you put that because, you really want to think about it from, okay, so let's look deeper into the supply chain, right?
yeah.
We've had all these uncertainties occur. And even in the last 4 to 6 months, we've gradually seen kind of the trucking market declining. The cameras are tripping me out here a bit, so forgive me, but we're seeing a decline. Now, despite that decline, we keep seeing things that should not typically happen when we have an overabundance of capacity. Last week, we had Estes suffer a cyber attack, and our hearts really go out to them because I can't imagine, like, there are days when the computer just doesn't start right and I feel frazzled. I can't imagine a cyber attack. At the same time, we also had Yellow go out of business at the end of July or beginning of August. Forgive me, I can't remember exactly when. But those different uncertainty factors that are coming into play, those different events, we have to have some stability somewhere, even if it is stability that we can't really control. So, for example, when events like that happen, creating content that will help you to convey your empathy toward that company, sharing what you are doing in the meantime. Even some of the most mundane tasks on earth can really kind of help provide a stabilizing force against that as part of that first aid against uncertainty cross. And, for me and for things that I remember from being in college, there are certain things that you can do that can just make you feel better, whether that's eating your favorite snack, eating your favorite breakfast food, or maybe even going outside and pulling some weeds. Now, I hate pulling weeds, but going outside and pulling a few weeds can kind of provide a sense of mundane, I don't know if mundaneness is a word, but a sense of mundane responsibility that will help me to make it through the current sense of near panic and come out better on the other end. Whether that is content marketing to help us succeed, getting into the mind of supply chain companies and thinking about what they need to do to succeed, and also just being considerate of different business needs and what each business can take and do from a leadership level to empower the team to effectively ship success to your future with search engine optimization, content marketing, even when you feel like you need to wall things off to protect yourself, you still have to do something. And if you stop doing something, that's where you run the risk of failure.
Yeah. I will issue a slight warning for those who are planning on going out and getting their hands dirty and pulling weeds. I did that this weekend and accidentally cut the fiber line and was without internet for days, and it made me sad. That's all I have to say.
I can understand. Kevin, remind me to take a look at your PTO. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But reality is, you do want to take a proactive stance because there are going to be setbacks. One of these days I'm going to remember names. Nathan and Susanna mentioned that you have to reframe those business decisions and think about innovative solutions, because what happened last week doesn't mean we know what we're going to do this week. It means we know what we needed to do Wednesday through Friday of last week. What happens this week doesn't mean that we know what we need to do in 3 months. What happens today only tells us what we can do to try to fix it, but what has worked in the past doesn't always work for the future. And you really have to, prime your lead generation engine. What is that phrase you like to say around sustainability?
Yeah, it's the sustainable lead generation engine, meaning if you do the tasks now, it's going to be running in the background. And you could, in theory, I wouldn't suggest it, but you could stop and it will keep going because you've done the work now. And I'm not saying that happens in 6 months or even a year, but it does happen. I've seen it happen with many of our clients where year 4, year 5, they just paused and they were still getting leads and leads and leads for over a year afterwards.
Exactly. And the only risk you really run when you take that approach is Who is the other company that's going to target the same keywords you are?
Yeah.
Who is the other company that's going to come up and overtake your spot because they could have the exact same content as you. Well,
Mhm.
not word for word because that would be illegal, but they could have the same idea,
Yeah.
have it properly optimized, and they could conceivably surpass you.
Yeah.
So
And
keeping it
to add
going,
to that, like everyone is doing something. There's very few companies that are just doing nothing. Everyone is competing for some very high value keywords so that
yes,
they can have the visibility, right? And so if you slow down or stop, other people are going to take the advantage.
yes,
So you need to increase your frequency. It's not just about doing, the right keywords. Yes, obviously that's super important, but you can't slow down. You can't stop. You got to keep going or you're going to lose the foothold because everyone is trying to compete for the same really valuable keywords.
precisely. And you really have to make those decisions, face the challenges. Like companies are always going to look to cut marketing budgets when problems arise.
Yeah,
But I mean, and that's not going to change.
right.
But if you have someone in your corner or even yourself, if you look at it through the lens of, hey, we can do this, and yes, it's going to free resources for the short term. But the thing to realize is that that means you're going to have to spend more in the future to catch back up. Spending more, whether that is spending more in email marketing, spending more on Google Ads while you wait on your SEO to return, all of those things can really impact a company and make or break it.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about sustainable lead generation, there's something that comes to mind, and it's that we all know who Flexport is, right? Flexport has for years been a powerhouse of search engine optimization. Now, what happened with Flexport in the last week? They laid off 30% of their staff. They are protecting against that uncertainty. Now, despite that, they are still creating content, just not as much as they did before because of how far they were able to take it in the first wave. But the question remains, if they had continued that wave, is it possible that a future where they wouldn't have had to lay anybody off might have been just on the horizon? What if they'd have made it to, next week and it had solved all those problems? We don't know.
Yeah.
But that's really where you have to look at it from a, let's reframe it. Let's prime it with the right type of content. Let's do it. Let's do something that can, you know, help. And one of the things that you have to know with that, you can't demonstrate or plan to do that actual doing part based solely on data.
Yeah.
There is a degree of instinct involved. And with SEO or content marketing in general, if you were to look at only the data for the first 4 or 5 months, depending on your industry, sometimes even a year, 18 months,
Yeah.
your first instinct is this has no ROI. But it's not until you really trust in the process and look beyond that that you see the best results.
Can I speak to that real quick?
Yes.
And it's a little bit more transparent probably, but this is something that we're constantly in. As a relatively, we're not we've refreshed some marketing goals for ourselves, and we are being reminded daily that it takes a while. It does take time to do these things, but as leaders, if we can remain calm and composed, especially in uncertain times, we can set the tone for the whole organization. We know that we're doing the right thing. We know that if we keep doing it, the results will show. Maybe not as quickly as we'd like, but we do know that it does take time. We are doing the right actions and we're confident in that because we've seen it happen time and time again. We're using historical data to bolster our own confidence as we move forward as an organization. But that only happens through experience, through instinct, and just being calm and composed. We are primed and we're ready to go. We're doing the activity. We've reframed things from, uh, what was the word they have for it? We're reframing. There are some definite challenges, that we're experiencing, but we can just reframe those into opportunities. And when we started to do that, we did this just a couple months ago. We saw plenty of opportunities, and we were able to take action to set ourselves up for success in the future.
Exactly. And that really does kind of, I think, get us close to the home on this,
Yeah.
which is we have to explore those new tools and strategies. We have to increase engagement and reduce confusion.
Yeah.
Rather than getting lost, ask yourself, what if we get it right? And that to me just means so much, because we can do a lot of things. We can streamline operations. We can look at when we're going to diversify our suppliers in the supply chain. We can look at what new companies have arisen. We've got all of these different companies in recent months that are leveraging data from the FMCSA. FMCSA. Sorry, I had to.
It's too many letters.
Despite the length I've been in this industry, now for those of you who don't know, I have been working in supply chain since 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And doing content marketing in supply chain since 2011. Even with that, it still gets tricky at times. So making a mistake is definitely not frowned upon. It is taking the step to actually go and make sure you say it correctly or that you follow through correctly that makes all the difference. Because all you have to do is focus on what if we can get it right.
Yeah.
And I think that literally leads us into our next section in this book where they talk about transformational leadership. They discuss where, our idea of leadership has had to evolve. Myself, in my role, I look at our scorecard and, it makes my hair fall out. Meanwhile, there are other days where I look at it and I'm like, oh, it's good. It's starting to grow back. So, you really have to have a degree of trust in it. Now, that's not blind trust, but you have to have that degree of trust to move forward.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really what we can do to embody success and efficiency in both supply chain management, supply chain disruption, and content.
That's a great point. And if I could just offer some encouragement to those that are tuning in today, if you are someone in a managerial role or leadership in your company, I can't reiterate enough how important it is to stay calm and composed in uncertain times, because those under you look to you for guidance. They look to you to be the calm in the storm, right? Because if you panic, they panic, and a panicked organization falters. Now, I know a lot of you are probably struggling because we are in uncertain times, and you may be calm and stoic, right? But you could be a whirlwind of turmoil inside, because there are things that are expected of you, goals that you're trying to hit, deliverables that need to be hit, and you don't know how you're going to do it. It's a perfect time to know when to outsource certain tasks that you don't have to do. Others, like ourselves, can come alongside you and partner with you and collaborate to help you hit your goals. You don't have to do it by yourself. You're not alone. You may feel like you're on an island, but you're not. You can reach out for help, and we at Jason's Creations would love to help you.
Definitely. I think that also kind of speaks to a core point we made in a blog we published recently.
Yeah.
So the blog was named "The Signs It's Time to Hire a Content Marketing Agency." One of the core things in there is you're following a reactive and not a proactive approach to digital marketing. That's very applicable to what you're discussing,
Yeah.
but it's also applicable to yourself. When you think about your body, you can either take a reactive or proactive approach. And a reactive approach involves those negative behaviors. It involves dealing with sicknesses when they arise because, stress does take a toll.
Yeah.
And it is important to take the time you need to help yourself, protect yourself, and recognize that while you might be uncertain, you might be worried, and you could be, well, let's just be honest, you might be terrified.
Yeah.
You only have to get through it till you get to the edge of that shadow possibility to where you can thrive.
Yeah.
And that is the best thing that you can take out of this chapter, is the fact that disruption's not going anywhere. Uncertainty is not going anywhere. So you can follow what Gino Wickman says in Traction. You can either live with it, change it, or end it. And next week, we're going to talk about transformational leadership. So if you want to check out that blog that I mentioned, I'm going to pop the link down in the comments below. Check it out. Reach out to us. And in the meantime, we're going to talk and think about ourselves, about how we can lead with our head and heart for next week. And I invite you all to join us again next Wednesday at 11:30 a.m., where we will have our next chapter on lessons learned from certain uncertainty.